Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. 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 Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jai Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandan Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandan Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamunatiravanachari. Yamunatiravanachari. Jai Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamunatiravanachari. Yamunatiravanachari. Jai Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. 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 जय जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। जय विष्णुपद परमहंस प्रभुगाचार्य श्रोधर श्री श्रीमद श्रील अभय चरणारिंद भक्ति विराट स्वामी महाराज श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। नाम आचार्य श्रील ठाकुर हरिदास की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासारि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंद राधा कुंद गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। वृंदावन धाम की जय। नवद्वीप मायापुर धाम की जय। गंगा देवी की जय। यमुना मई की जय। भक्ति देवी की जय। तुलसी रानी की जय। समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। ISKCON BBT संस्थापक आचार्य श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। गौ प्रेमानंदे। All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Jai Shri Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nashta Praishwa Bhatresho Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Krishne Swadhamopagate Dharmajnanadhibhissaha Kalau Nashta Drishamesha Puranarko Thunoditaha. This is Grantaraj Śrimad Bhāgavatam, 4th Canto, Chapter 8, text number 29. Narada is continuing to give instructions to Dhruva Maharaj. So kindly repeat. Paritusyet tataham tat tavat matrena purashaham daiva upasaditam yavat vikshya ishwaragatim buddha paritusyet tatastat tavan matrena purashah daivopasaditam yavat viksheshwaragatim buddha paritusyet tatastat tavan matrena purashah daivopasaditam yavat viksheshwaragatim buddha paritusyet tatastat tavan matrena purashah दैवोपसादितं यावत् वीक्ष्येश्वरगतिं बुधः परितुष्येत्ततस्तात् तावन्मात्रेण पूरुषः 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 दैवोपसादितं यावत् वीक्ष्येश्वरगतिं बुधः परितुष्येत्. One should be satisfied. Tataha, therefore. Tata, my dear boy. Tavat, up to such. Matrena, quality. Purushaha, a person. Deva, destiny. Upasaditam, offered by. Yavat, as. Vikshya, seeing. Ishwaragatim, the process of the Supreme. Buddhaham, one who is intelligent. Translation. The process of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very wonderful. One who is intelligent should accept that process and be satisfied with whatever comes, favorable or unfavorable, by his supreme will. Kindly repeat. The process of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very wonderful. One who is intelligent should accept that process and be satisfied with whatever comes, favorable or unfavorable, by his supreme will. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, founder and Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, Savior of the modern world. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The great sage Narada instructed Dhruva Maharaja that one should be satisfied in all circumstances. Everyone who is intelligent should know that because of our concept of bodily existence, we are subjected to suffering and enjoyment. One who is in the transcendental position, beyond the concept of bodily life, is considered to be intelligent. One who is a devotee, especially, accepts all reverses as gifts of the Supreme Lord. When a devotee is put into distress, he accepts this as God's mercy and offers him repeated obeisances with his body, mind, and intellect. An intelligent person, therefore, should be always satisfied depending on the mercy of the Lord. Om Ajnanatimidandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupah Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Following in the footsteps of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, we pray that Madgavira pi Gopala Swikuryat Kripaya Yadi Tadaiva Sampayaha Pitva Hrishyayus Tat Priyajanaha. My dear Lord Gopal, only if you accept my words as your cows will they give sweet milk to provide pleasure to your pure devotees. In his commentary on this verse, Sridhar Swami writes, Upashamopadeshena nevartayati paritushyaiti sadbhihi Ishwaragatim viksheshwaranukulyam vina nodyamaha phalahetava iti gnatva paritusyet santoshameva kuryat. That means that in the 6 verses from here, 6 verses beginning with this one, he wants to dissuade Dhruva Maharaj through pacifying instructions that pacify. Here the word Ishwaragatim means favorable for seeing the Lord, or favorable to the Lord seeing us, knowing that without him, no efforts are fruitful. Paritoshyate means that one should be satisfied. One should simply be satisfied. Santoshameva kuryat. That's his brief commentary. Jiva Goswami adds, Yatra phala prapakam daivam tatraiveshwaranukulyam bhavatiti daivopasaritenaiva paritoshyed iti bhavaha. Daivam ishwaro va. So, that means that receiving results is always according to karma, daivam, which is ultimately in accordance with the Lord's will. One should be satisfied by whatever the Lord arranges. Or daivam can also mean the Lord himself. This is very consequential interpretation of Jiva Goswami, just bookmark that. He says that the word Ishwara can mean Daiva, means either Daiva. Daiva can mean Ishwara or Daiva can mean a fate, either way. Sometimes the two are separated, but that's mostly a matter of public relations because the Lord has to keep everyone pacified. And if the Lord is ultimately responsible personally for everything that happens to every living being, then people criticize him. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says here, Yasmad evam tasmad daivena prachina nijakarmana upasaditam prapitam yavat tat pramanakam sukham dukkham va tavan matrina paritosyet vivekena soparjada buddheti bhavaha tatcha ishwara gatim vikshya ishwara preritameva karma phalatiti jnatveti arthaha. So, This being the case, then by intelligence one should be satisfied with whatever amount of happiness and distress is attained by one's own actions from previous lives. One should understand that karma produces results under the direction of the Lord. That's how he takes Ishwaragati in this verse. So here the words tavan matrena, as much as, means that whether one gets happiness or distress according to his own karma, or according to the Lord's will, one should simply remain satisfied. In fact, you don't have a choice. So it's intelligent to be satisfied. Tamal Krishna Goswami once told me that two kinds of Western people join ISKCON. One is the Roman Catholics, and the other is the Jews. These two you'll see among the Western membership of ISKCON, these two groups are prominent, or at least they used to be in the old days. He said the Catholics join because it's the right thing to do, and the Jews join because it's the smart thing to do. So whether you want to look at things in terms of fate, or whether you want to see the Lord's hand, personal involvement in your suffering and enjoyment, either way you have no choice. So the intelligent thing to do, Buddha, the word here is used, Buddha means an intelligent person. The intelligent thing is to remain simply satisfied. Satisfied. What is satisfaction? Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines satisfaction in at least 7 ways. It's the fulfillment of a need or a want. That's probably the primary use. It's the quality or state of being satisfied. It's some gratification. It's compensation, atonement, or restitution for some perceived wrongdoing. Vindication. It's reparation, or it's payment for sin through penance. These are all in English. These are the meaning of the word satisfaction. It's actually much more simple in Sanskrit. The verbal root here is santush, samyak tush. Tush means to feel completely satisfied or contented with something, or to be pleased or delighted with something. That's all. It hasn't really taken on too much other connotation over the thousands of years that the Sanskrit language has been prevalent. So satisfaction is a godly quality, and we find that it's often appreciated throughout Scripture. For example, in the Śrimad Bhāgavatam, those of you who are keeping scrupulous notes, you can, in your own leisure time, look up 1st Canto, Chapter 16, Text 26, 11th Canto, Chapter 18, Text 43, 5th Canto, Chapter 9, Text 1, and so on. Now, in the 3rd Canto here, in just... we've already passed the 3rd Canto, but in the 3rd Canto, Chapter 28, we find text number 3, or text number 2, Swadharmacharanam shaktya vidharmacha nivartanam daivallabdhenat santosha atmavit charanarchanam. Quote, one should execute his prescribed duties to the best of his ability and avoid performing duties not allotted to him. One should be satisfied with as much gain as he achieves by the grace of the Lord, and one should worship the lotus feet of the spiritual master. End quote. Such a beautiful verse. 3.28.2 from the Śrimad Bhāgavatam. And Prabhupada in his purport emphasizes that being satisfied by performing one's prescribed duty, and in particular performing one's own prescribed duty. Why is that? Because it's very popular for people to try to perform someone else's prescribed duty, but that's actually prohibited in the Shastras. We'll discuss in a moment. But Another aspect of satisfaction is therefore satisfaction in whatever the Lord bestows upon one. So these two things, Prabhupada in that particular verse is emphasizing that you should not do what we call paradharma. What is called paradharma in the Śrimad Bhāgavatam, 7th canto, chapter 15, text number 12. It goes on, I think, for a few verses, up until maybe verse 15, discussing this issue of all the different kinds of pseudo-dharma that are available in this world. And in particular, it says, Vidharma paradharmascha abhasa upamachalaha adharma shakha panchema dharmagno adharmavat tyajet. That means there are 5 branches of irreligion, appropriately known as plain old irreligion. That's called vidharma, or we call it vikarma, or we call it papa, or whatever you want to call it. Sin. Then there is religious principles for which one is unfit because they belong to someone else. That's called paradharma. That's what we're talking about here. And then there's pretentious religion, abhasa, something that looks like religion, but actually it's not really intended at all for that. That's called dharmabhasa. Just like we have namabhasa in Krishna consciousness, so in the material world, regarding mundane dharma, it's possible to do dharmabhasa, and that is considered to be sinful. It should be rejected according to this verse. So then we also have upama dharma. Upama, that's not South Indian breakfast. Upama means a comparison to something in Sanskrit. Upama. Metaphor. Metaphorical religion, we might say. Analogical religion is the translation here. That's another type. And then there's deliberate cheating, which is in the name of religion, though. These people who become pseudo-gurus and claim to be God and all this nonsense. This is out-and-out cheating. Chala dharma. Chala means cheating. So one who is aware of real religious principles must abandon these 5 as irreligious. Adharmavat. Dharmagno adharmavat tyajet. Very important instruction from Narad Muni in the 7th canto. You can study that passage in your own free time. But here we have Ishwara Gatim in this verse. Ishwara Gatim. What does that mean? The Lord as the goal. That's one way to translate it. There are different ways to interpret Sanskrit compounds. So the Lord being one's goal. Ishwara Gati. The two are equated. Then there's what we call Bahuvrihi Samasa. It's the goal of the Lord. The goal that the Lord wants you to attain. Or even we can say someone whose goal is the Lord. This is also Ishwara Gati. So all these different ways to understand this word here in this verse just shows how expressive and economical the Sanskrit language is, because you can say so much in just very, very simply. So it's a very pregnant kind of double entendre here. English is a very suitable language for geopolitical concepts, for scientific, technological concepts, even social, psychological concepts. English is very, very appropriate for that, communicating that sort of thing. But when it comes to trying to communicate spirituality, English becomes a little bit unwieldy. We were discussing dharma a moment ago. Just out of curiosity, I did a word search through the Bhaktivedanta database and found at least 24 discrete translations of the one word, dharma. 24. Who can give me some of them? What does dharma mean? Essence? Okay, you can say that. Essence in the sense of the ontology of a thing, that the essential swarup or the lakshana of a thing. That is dharma. Yeah, that's a scientific approach. How about another approach? There are different ways to look at the term. Well, how else do we define this word dharma? Well, that's the same thing that we're talking about. Jaiva dharma, it's the same thing. You have your mundane dharma, and then you have your Jaiva dharma, or your Sanatan dharma. But there's mundane ways of looking at this. What is some mundane duty? Yes. Religion, yeah, in a mundane sense. Occupation as well. Vritti, you can even say. So yeah, in this way I found so many definitions of dharma. But really it means Sanatan dharma, because all these other things are to be taken as a function of that Sanatan dharma. We have our eternal ontology. That's a fancy Latin word that means your real essence, what you really are forever. Inalienable essence. That's called your own dharma or your Sanatan dharma. So everybody's Sanatan dharma, we know, it's also called Paro dharma. It is pure devotional service to Lord Krishna. But as a function of that eternal dharma, we have so many other dharmas in this world, and they help to prevent degradation, because we know that when you come into this world and start associating with things, what happens when you associate with things? Sangat sanjayate kama. And what happens from kama? Everybody always works on what he wants. And sometimes they don't say what they want, but they always do what they want. So kama results in action, and action results in reaction. That's described in so many places throughout the Vedic literatures. Lokoyam karma bandhanaha. All right, so yeah, mundane dharmas we have. And so yeah, 5 kinds of irreligion that sometimes appear to be dharmic. That's the whole point. With the exception of maybe the first one, which is vidharma. Nobody pretends that that's religion. They're just out and out breaking the law. That's called vidharma or vikarma. Actually, karma and dharma, they're the same word. Really, they mean the same thing. Strictly speaking, they mean the same thing. Although karma has a wider arena of meanings than the word dharma, but strictly speaking, karma means ritual activity that is enjoined in Shastra, and that is exactly the same thing, the same definition of dharma in a practical sense. All right, so enough of that. But yeah, so English is not a great language for expressing these subtle concepts. Sanskrit is perfect for it. So today we're talking about satisfaction, because Narad Muni is advising Dhruva to be satisfied in all circumstances, and we'll see that Dhruva is really not satisfied by this, because he's very passionate. And when we're passionate, we also get like this. We tend to go to the vidharmas, or the paradharma, or the chala dharma, or the upama dharma, or the abhasa dharma. In the name of dharma, in a general umbrella term for all these things is kaidava dharma, cheating. It's all considered to be cheating. And that's why Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami in his Chaitanya Charitamrita in the beginning, he says in a very bold sense that the root of all cheating is dharma. You wouldn't think so. Dharma is supposed to be virtuous, good, elevating things. Anyway, so in the 8th canto, chapter 19, text 24, Vamanadev, the incarnation of the Lord, very beloved incarnation, he told Baliraja, Yadrichayopapannena santushto vartate sukham nasantustas tribhirlokair arjitatmopasaditaihi. That means that one should be satisfied with whatever he achieves by his previous destiny. For discontent can never bring happiness. A person who is not self-controlled will not be happy, even with possessing the 3 worlds. Very sanguine instruction here, and very germane instruction also, because it's essentially the same thing that Narad Muni is trying to share with Dhruva Maharaj in this context. One has to be satisfied whatever he achieves by his previous destiny. And the word Buddha is used because one has to be intelligent enough to recognize that whatever you get is in fact your destiny. Likhitam api lalate pronchitam kaha samartha. Hitopadesh tells us. Who is that person who's able to erase whatever's written on your forehead? You cannot erase your dharma, my friend. You cannot do that. You may not like it, but you cannot erase it. You can only efface it. You can pervert it. Then it becomes one of these 5 adharmas that we were discussing. So, one has to be satisfied and do one's own duty. And, moreover, that's just for peaceful, harmonious, prosperous material existence. If you want to make spiritual advancement on top of that, then you have to think about parodharma. And that's why Śrimad Bhāgavatam says that all these, kaitava dharmas, even genuine dharma, it's either a temporary phase of spiritual advancement that you're going through, or it's a waste of time. Shrama eva hi kevalam. And once people recognize this, either they leave Krishna consciousness or they take seriously to it. So we see both kinds. In the Western community of ISKCON devotees, it's been seen over half a century, in my experience at least, that people who figure out what the philosophy really means, especially among the Westerners, they leave. Mostly they leave. Some people stay. I mean, even in India also, people mostly they leave, but in the West they leave mostly for vidharma or vikarma, whereas in India they leave for some upadharma or some, any of these 5 that we were discussing. But if they're serious after a long time, they may take to Krishna consciousness in all sincerity. But very often we see Westerners come easily, they go easily. Indians do not come easily in general. And therefore they do not go easily. Because when they do come, they take it up seriously. This is the great benediction of having a pious upbringing in Krishna consciousness, or at least in dharmic consciousness. We're all suffering a very severe retardation. Those of us who are socialized in Western, which means Marxist, feminist societies, we're all suffering under the effect of that, in effect, brainwashing, because it deprives us of any sense of dharma. Hindus may have the wrong sense of dharma. That is usually a given. But at least they have any sense of dharma, and that's very helpful. Maybe, I don't know, but maybe this is why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Bharata bhumi te hoilo, manusha janma jar, janma sharha kori korpa arubakar, specifically addressing the Indians. There has to be a reason for it. You should think about that. But anyway, when a dharmic person, someone who understands dharma, finally gives up all the other kinds of cheating dharmas, then he's solid and very, very hard. In fact, Srila Prabhupada even said this about the Chinese. You wouldn't think so, because China, throughout all of its recorded history, has never had any tradition of really real theism. It's had philosophical traditions, and it also inherited Buddhism from India. But if you think about Buddhism, it's not really a religion because it doesn't accept the authority of the Vedas. In our tradition, theism is not defined by belief in God. It's defined by belief and acceptance in the Vedic authority. That's a very crucial thing to meditate on as well. But despite that, it seems to me that whatever dharma they did inherit, either from Confucius or less so maybe Taoism, but certainly from Buddhism, it did instill some sense of dharma. And that's why Srila Prabhupada said regarding the Chinese, when they join, they will be the last to join, but when they do join, they'll make the best devotees. Interesting things to consider, but anyway. So, one should be satisfied with whatever he achieves by his previous destiny. For discontent can never bring happiness. Discontent. We have so many malcontents in the modern world, isn't it? People just, it seems like nobody's happy, everybody's complaining. That's why Krishna tells us in Bhagavad Gita, if you want to entertain that you are spiritually advanced now, then just put it to the test. And what is that test? Na shochati, na kangshati, sama sarveshu bhuteshu, and brahma bhutas prasannatma. It's not an easy thing to attain these qualifications because they're predicated on the ones that immediately precede it in Bhagavad Gita. We don't have one handy here, Bhagavad Gita as it is, but you can look it up for yourself. Just before that verse, famous verse, 1854 is it? I believe so. All the qualifications. So, Na shochati. Shankaracharya even goes so far as to say that the definition of Shudra is somebody who's always whining and complaining and is dissatisfied. Because what is a prominent characteristic of the Brahmanas? We mentioned, hinted at least already. It's a godly quality that is very much appreciated throughout the Vedic literature, and that is what? The topic of today's verse. Which quality? Santushti, santosh, satisfaction. Brahmana, therefore he's happy. Prasannatma. He doesn't have any more obstructions. He's gone through the process of removing all material attachments. And so the innate happiness of the self is able to shine through. Otherwise it's obstructed and it's perverted, as we said earlier. So this is our program in Krishna consciousness, at least initially. Kleshagni Shubhada Bhakti. The initial stages only, the two initial stages of sadhana bhakti are that you become freed from all of your miseries, relatively, and you become auspicious. You become situated and auspicious. And in fact, without doing that, Krishna says in chapter 7, text 28, you will not be able to sustain a mature commitment to pure devotional service. It generally doesn't happen. And that's, we've discussed already. That's why either people never join or they join and they go easily. Because the piety is not there. What is chapter 7, text 28? Who can tell me, brahmacharis? And bachelors, you're included because you're living here. You should know these things. Wrong. Sorry. Yesham tvantagatam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvanvamoha nirmukta bhajante mandrahavrataha. He says that those persons who have become freed from past sinful reactions, such as dissatisfaction, that's one of them, one of the anarthas, and who are fixed in piety in this life also, those persons are free from the compounded illusions that dualism precipitates. You understand what I mean? If you are too much absorbed in mundane duality, sense gratification, happiness, distress, all this material life, then it's going to just completely contaminate and permeate your intelligence. What's that called in the 5th canto? Rishabhadev calls it karnamatmaka. To have a mind full of karma. A mind full of karma means a mind full of anxiety. Chinta. In Vrindavan I saw it was written on the wall. Chinta matkara, chintana kijiye. Those who understand Hindi will understand the pun. Don't be in anxiety, meditate on Krishna instead. Chinta means anxiety. Therefore we worship in Gokula. Yashoda was advised to worship Chinta Harana Mahadeva. Mahadev who removes the chintas, removes the anxieties. All right, so a person should be free from the dualistic illusions that are especially, case-hardened by sinful activity, but, nourished even by pious activity. You cannot persevere in devotional service until you come up above these things. Matra sparashastu kaunteya shitoshna sukhadukkadaha agamapaino nityasthanstitikshasu bharata. It's the same idea. To be tolerant is to be satisfied. A dissatisfied person cannot be tolerant. And Krishna says, this is the winter and the summer, they're coming, and the happiness and the stress, they're coming, the victory and the defeat are coming, and labha labha jaya jayo. He tells Arjuna that you need to be able to fight despite all the comings and goings of these relative things, these dualistic things. That is the symptom of your liberation. Narad Muni is here trying to bring Dhruva Maharaj to this platform, but as we'll see, he's not really ripe yet for this kind of instruction. He says this is good for Brahmins, priestly, virtuous people, but I'm a Kshatriya, and my only goal is, we heard yesterday, anything you can tell me that's appropriate for gaining this kingdom greater than that of my ancestors, that's relevant. Otherwise, I'm not interested. So, we also have our attachments, whatever they may be, even though we're on much lower scale than Dhruva Maharaj. He was very powerful. But a person who is discontented can never be happy. And a person who's not self-controlled will not be happy, even if he has everything. The Shudras and others, they cry and whine and lament and complain because they can't get what they want. And their wants are just as limitless as our wants. But some people complain, other people don't complain, but hardly anybody will give it up. What does he say, Shankaracharya? Just now I can't remember, but he says that day comes, night comes, dawn and dusk come and go, winter and summer come and go. Time plays with us. Life departs eventually, but at no point will anyone give up his bundle of hopes. Tadapi namunchati ashavayuhu. It's as dear as one's life. Ashavayuhu. So this is the problem that Dhruva Maharaj is in. This is the predicament that he's in. We'll see how Narad Muni deals with it. But Prabhupada writes in his purport to this 8th canto verse that we're quoting, if happiness is the ultimate goal of life, one must be satisfied with the position he is placed in by providence. This instruction is also given by Prahlad Maharaj. Anybody know? Sukham aindriyakam daitya. Yes. Sarvatra labhyate devat yatha dukkham ayatnataha. Misery comes without being sought. Nobody's seeking misery out except for the crazy people. And everywhere we find that by fate, everybody gets what they get in life, whatever is your lot in life. Deha yogena, dehinam. By the person who is embodied, in contact, in connection with that body, he gets happiness, he gets distress regarding his senses. So this philosophy is perfect in regard to obtaining happiness. Real happiness is described in Bhagavad Gita. Sukham atyantikam yattad buddhi grahyam atindriyam. Atindriyam. Real happiness is above the senses. Veti yatra nrachayvayam stitash chalati tatvataha. In that spiritually joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness and enjoys himself through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth. One has to perceive happiness by the super senses. Nice word that Prabhupada uses. Because we have super senses. Spiritual existence is not impersonal. It is highly personal. It is highly sensual, believe it or not. But these are super senses, not mundane senses. So this is the point. Our senses, every one of us is a spiritual being, aham brahmasmi, and every one of us is an individual person. In chapter 4 of Bhagavad Gita, text 10, Prabhupada's purport very repetitively and very brilliantly points out the modern disease. Raga, Bhaya, Krodha. These three things. What do they mean? Attachment, fear, and anger. We understand our attachments. We understand why we might be angry also. What are we afraid of? Bhayam dvitiya bhinaveshata syat. When you turn away from God, you have to be afraid. But what are we afraid of actually? Karma, yeah, we're afraid of so many things. But Prabhupada explains that verse, that what we're really afraid of is our own spiritual identity. And that translates into advanced thought as our own spiritual personality. That's what we're afraid of. Because everything of our experience in this world, maybe more so in New York City than elsewhere, is that personal relationships are all dysfunctional. And they bring so much misery. And so when it's proposed that this is forever, hey, I'm checking out. Nobody wants to go there. That's what Prabhupada, it's a very interesting purport, one of his most brilliant purports, classic. Anyway, here we're talking about the fact that we have super senses, and we consider the material senses that cover those super senses to be our real senses. The real senses, however, are within the material covering. That is to say, inside of that covering. Dehi no sminyatha dehe. Within the covering of material elements are the spiritual senses. Sarvopadhi vinirmuktam tatparatvena nirmalam. When the spiritual senses are uncovered by these senses, we can be happy. Satisfaction of the spiritual senses is thus described. Hrishikesha sevanam bhakti ruchyate. You take these gross senses by dint of the determination of your spiritual senses, and you engage them in the service of the master of the senses, Hrishikesha. When we do that, then what happens? We become tatparatva, nirmala tatparatva. We become just as transcendental and pure as the Lord is. Actually, we're already there. It's just that we've double-clicked on our own spirituality out of fear, and we are entertaining some false concept, deep fake personality. This is what we have here in this world. We're all deep fakes. And by this process, Prabhupada writes, real happiness will never be possible. Without this superior knowledge of sense gratification, one may try to satisfy his material senses, but happiness will never be possible. One may increase his ambition for sense gratification and even achieve what he desires for the gratification of his senses, but because this is on the material platform, he will never achieve satisfaction and contentment. It will always be pratihata, means wiped out at some point, or it will be, what's the other one? Haituki. There will be some agenda there. But anyway, everything here is temporary. We're just asking for trouble. All right. So according to Brahminical culture, Prabhupada continues, one should be content with whatever he obtains without special endeavor and should cultivate spiritual consciousness. Then he will be happy. The purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement is to spread this understanding. People who do not have scientific spiritual knowledge mistakenly think that the members of the Krishna consciousness movement are escapists trying to avoid material activities. In fact, however, we are engaged in real activities for obtaining the ultimate happiness in life. If one is not trained to satisfy the spiritual senses and continues in material sense gratification, he will never obtain happiness that is eternal and blissful. Śrimad Bhāgavatam therefore recommends, Tapo divyam putraka yena sattvam shuddhed yasmad brahma saukyam dvanantam. Just like as soon as I end the class, in a moment, we're all going to go and fill up a full plate of Brahma Sokyam, correct? And we will enjoy through our spiritual senses. Of course, it also generally tends to be satisfying to the material senses also, depending on the cook. But this is the point, that we should practice austerity so that our existential position will be purified, that is to say, uncovered, and we'll achieve unlimited blissful life. This is the point. So, yeah, the same word is used in this 8th canto verse that I'm quoting here. Upasadita. Upasadita means whatever is attained by fate or by the Lord. Now, there are two ways to look at it. If you think that Krishna is directly causing your happiness and distress, that's maybe a more devotional perspective, as long as you can tolerate whatever Krishna hands out. Because sometimes it's not so easy. Even Srimati Radharani knows that. That's why we take shelter of Srimati Radharani a little more in Vrindavan, because she's one of us. She has to put up with Krishna also. But she says he's a lamparta. Lampart, those who know South Asian languages know it's a very strong term of abuse. Very strong term. The rascal doesn't quite cut it. I mean, I can't think of anything that is not vulgar or profane to really express. But he's not a compliment. And not only Srimati Radharani, but all of her friends, they kind of have this, So they understand that if we're having a hard time from Krishna's hand directly, then we can take shelter of them and they're a little softer. This is what we do in Vrindavan. On the other hand, the general philosophy is here stated by Narad Muni to Dhruva Maharaj. Baba, you have to take your fate. You cannot get around it. It's just the way it is. You have no choice, really. So better learn to tolerate it and advance spiritually. Now, finally, before I end, I'm sorry for going a little over time, but why do devotees suffer? Somebody asked me this question. Even devotees, they sometimes suffer. We say that when you're initiated, then all your karma is taken away. So this verse is telling us that it's coming from fate, which means karma. So why are we still suffering? What's the problem? Who knows an answer? Yes. Yeah. Which Prabhupada is paraphrasing in today's purport also.
We're, free from the laws of karma. Krishna gives us something that's very similar to that, so we can the residual enjoying spirit in the direction that our karma takes is eliminated, gradually eliminated.
Yeah.
And
that's one reason.
What was the question again?
Why do devotees suffer?
Yeah.
Even after initiation.
The number one reason is that they forget the philosophy that's contained in that purport. They just get back onto the bodily platform. And, it's also impetus. There's one instruction that Srila Prabhupada gave Giriraj Swami in Mumbai, and that's that Krishna takes charge of your sinful reactions and uses them to help you advance. So if you actually see Krishna's hand behind this, then it's a loving exchange.
Yes.
This is what comes out in the purport.
Very important.
And if you actually believe that, and you'll experience it. I've gone through situations. Once I was in Vrindavan and I got severe blood dysentery. It's super painful. And I just recited this sloka, 10:14:8, Tate nukampam shukshamikshamano, and I was in bliss in spite of being in a disgusting, extremely painful circumstance. From a material standpoint. That the spiritual senses came alive. I guess that's what the spiritual senses mean. You experience that bliss. You take darshan of Radha Govinda and wow, you just feel all this bliss. And like that.
Ice cream for the soul.
What's that? Ice cream for
ice cream for kids. So this is darshan is for the soul what ice cream is for kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, Madhvacharya even quotes from the Puranas to the effect that the more suffering a devotee is buried underneath, the more bliss he becomes the more ananda he feels. That's really hard for us to accept. Very hard to accept.
But that's what Prabhupada demonstrated.
Yes, he did.
There's more and more bliss.
Yeah.
And, assisting the departure of my, Sankirtan partner for 18 years is Nirguna Prabhu, who's from Atlanta, I don't know if you know. And he was so blissed out at the end, even though he had excruciating pain. And, it's just incredible.
Yep, we're supposed to come to the spiritual platform, that's the point. And as long as we're cemented to the bodily concept of life, we're going to suffer. These are all things that we've said already from the purport directly. So, yeah, the meaning is clear only to those who act on these instructions. And Krishna says that in chapter 15 of Bhagavad Gita. So that's all we have to do. We just have to apply this knowledge, and then we will realize. But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in Canto 5 regarding Priyavrata Maharaj, who underwent some difficulties, he says that there are two reasons that devotees have to suffer also. One is Krishna's direct hand, as you said. Another one is that he's committed some offense. And that creates reverses for him to undergo. And, some degree, as you said, of the karma is allowed through by Krishna's own desire. Now, a third reason, if you will, is that Krishna's devotees want us to suffer. I mean, that's a very pregnant statement, isn't it? But he says that either the Lord, for his own inscrutable reason, or the Lord's pure devotees want us to suffer. Not necessarily pure devotees also, because sometimes we see demigods try to cause problems for devotees sometimes. Many examples. So, and these are powerful persons. You don't really stand much of a chance when you're up against a powerful demigod like, say, Skanda, for example. I mean, they can do a lot if they want. But Mayam etam tarantite. His mother can, keeps everybody in the prison. Skanda's mother is who? Maya Devi, Durga. But Krishna says, Mayam etam tarantite. If you surrender to me, I take you beyond it. So yeah, I mean, ultimately there's only one reason, and that is all of this is only meant for one thing, and that is to increase our faith, which means to increase our spiritual advancement, which means to increase our bhakti. It doesn't happen until your faith is increased. And your faith has to be challenged sometimes for it to increase. So these are important things to consider, but the time is run out, and I should end here. But if anybody has any burning question, maybe we can take one. Otherwise, as we said, it's time for prasadam. Yes. Chashmawala.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you so much for the wonderful question. Wonderful session. My question is, it's so burning that so at one point you were mentioning that the bona fide religions are the one which follows the Vedic injunctions. So
say that again.
You were mentioning that the religions are the one that follow the instructions of the Vedas. So, my question is
theist
that...
Theist means he follows the Vedas.
Sorry?
Theist means to follow the Vedas.
Yeah, theist, yeah.
He's called Astic, and anybody else called Gnostic, atheist.
So, my question is, Prabhu, that what does it mean to, follow the instructions of Vedas? Because there are theists, but they do not follow the instructions of Vedas.
Yeah, good point. I was discussing this last night with Pradyumna Prabhu, my godbrother, that Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, yajantya vidhi purvakam, that, the persons who are worshipping devatas, they're worshipping devatas, but they're not following the shastric vidhis. But there are shastric vidhis that govern devata puja. So what goes? He told me that with regard to nunam pramatta kurate vikarma, there's an alternate reading which is popular in South India, which is that, people who are too attached to karma. Nunam pramatta kurate karma. And that means just, this the hopeless attachment to mundane fruitive activities. So that kind of thing is also antithetical to the real purpose of the Vedas. This is the point. It's kind of like nistraygunya bhavarjana, You should become above all this stuff and come to the level of devotional service. Does that help to answer your question? Half of it? Okay, what's the other half?
I mean, I have to little bit contemplate on it. I cannot.
Sorry?
I have to little bit contemplate on it. I cannot just
Yeah,
understand
okay.
in a go.
Well, anyway, I'm not pushing an alternative reading of Śrimad Bhāgavatam. The point is that, even pious activity is sinful from a devotional perspective. Vishnupuri says this explicitly in a verse that Rupa Goswami includes in his Padyavali. Even if he's unstained by any sin throughout his whole life, he's committed every sin in the book if he's not a devotee. Sounds like a fanatical statement, but it's not so actually. And even if he is the most sinful person on the face of the earth, he's redeemed if he becomes a devotee. This is the principle. That Krishna has written all these, manifested, I should say, all these Vedas, just for the purpose of love. Of all persons, Jaimini Rishi, one of those atheists that you mentioned, who interprets the Vedas in non-devotional ways, even he says that the actual purpose of all this karma kandya stuff is only love. I'm not sure how he understood that, but, we can see this. The ultimate purpose of the whole Vedaischa sarvairnahameva vedyaha ityadi. Yeah, so it's just bhakti. All right, we should really stop now. Thank you. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.